Hi, you guys. This is Margaret, and today I wanted, well, it's nighttime here in Texas, and I want to do a quick video on using your propane heater, Mr. Buddy heater. And here's one of our Mr. Buddy heaters. I want to show you guys and tell you guys about how to use your propane and make it last as long as possible. We use a 20-pound um, the 20-pound tanks. I'll take you over here to the location of our other propane heater, Mr. Heater. And this is my end of the cabin. Mine is located pretty high. Um, that was like the best place that I could put it, where it wouldn't be too close to everything else. But I wanted to talk about the use of these heaters. They're great. Mr. Heaters are great. As you see, we have two of them in this cabin, and we use, they take propane. We have the 20-pound tanks located outside on each end of the cabin. But the thing is now, we're homestead, we're off the grid, and tiny home. Um, and a lot of people that do what we do and live like we live, we do our own thing. And in spite of, zoning code, a lot of times we don't even have zoning code. Like at our location, we don't have zoning code for the property. And that was one of the things that attracted me to this property. No zoning code. You can do whatever, how much ever you want to do. But and even though Mr. Heater, they have this disclaimer, and like a lot of people that do it yourselves, like ourselves, we know that the disclaimer is just protect protect the manufacturer or to protect the company. So a lot of times we disregard the disclaimer, but in regard to the Mr. Heater, I would say they're relatively safe, um, safe for indoor, outdoor. But the one disclaimer, and they our Mr. Heaters, they say they are safe for indoor and outdoor as well. But they recommend that you do not sleep. Do not keep them on while you sleep all night. And I must say, we've been using our Mr. Buddy heaters for more than 2 years now, and rarely do I sleep. In fact, I never sleep with the Mr. Heater running intentionally. There's been several times where I accidentally fell asleep, but I don't intentionally go to sleep with our heaters on. Even though we have a smoke and fire detector up here, located up here, but just to be safe. And personally, I don't like for the air to be completely dried out. But one thing here in Texas, it do get cold. We do have winter in Texas that I didn't really know how cold it got until after we moved here. But particularly at night, Texas get it can get really cold at night here in Texas. It could be 80 degrees in the daytime and a temperature drop below 20 at night. It's rare for that extreme, but it does happen. It has happened since we've been here. And so Texas do get cold. And but one of the things that with the propane heat, you want to okay, you have to bring it in. We don't have a like 400-gallon tank in our backyard or anything like that. So we have to haul it in. So when we use a 20-pound tank, we have to take it, somewhere to the city or in the next town or whatnot, and we have to bring in, we exchange it for a field one. So they're not too expensive, but everything is expensive if you have a small budget. But the big thing about it is that you have to go get it. And so what we do, we try to keep three 20-pound tanks on hand at all time, um, one on each end of the cabin to for each one of our Mr. Heaters. And so when one end of the cabin runs out of propane, we have a spare to refill it. But at the same time, we don't want to run out too quickly. So I have this developed this system, this routine where I keep the cabin warm without using up all of our propane real fast. You know, it's using as little as possible. So one of the key things to making your propane last as long as possible is insulate your cabin. I know many of you say, you know, that's like a no-brainer, but it wasn't a no-brainer to me. In my defense, you know, I was born and raised in the city. I have lived in the country a little bit, um, visited my cousin and my grandparents in Mississippi, but I spent majority of my life in the city, and this is the first cabin that we ever purchased, and I like the look of the open wood and everything. And as you see, I have made different little shelves in between the studs and everything. But I realized, I finally realized that we were spending way more money in propane than we would if we, you know, just went ahead and insulated. So, because we were buying propane costs about $20 per, you know, for every 20-gallon tank, and we were buying six, maybe seven, maybe even more than that, each month of 20-pound tanks of propane. So once I insulated, I still haven't completely finished insulating because I started insulating after we had lived inside the cabin for more than 2 years. So it consists of moving furniture and, you know, trying to get behind things and moving everything around. And so all of that is like pretty time consuming. But yeah, so insulating is the first thing, because if you don't insulate, I'm here to tell you, your propane heaters, Mr. Buddy, I keep saying Mr. Buddy, they're Mr. Heaters. They are great. They will heat up your space, and they will heat up your space quickly. There is nothing better that I know of, maybe besides firewood, but then you need that's another different story. But if you cold and you need to be heated up, you know, quickly, you need some real heat in your space, in your house, in your cabin. Mr. Heater is the way to go, but it heated up fast, and it also, then you have to turn it off, but your cabin will cool off just as fast as it heats up if you don't insulate. So I learned this the hard way. So the first tip is to insulate. The second tip is, especially here in Texas, even in the wintertime, once the sun comes up, chances are that we're going to, it's going to be, it's going to be warm. You know, or it's going to be a lot warmer than it is during the night. So once you, like here in Texas during the wintertime, about 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, it's starting to get warm, regardless of how cold it was the night before. So, well, another thing that I would like to say, this method that I used of prolonging our propane, I believe this is the way it was designed to be used. The Mr. Heaters are not to be used like space heating, you know, like space heaters, where you turn it on and you keep it on, and you know it maintains a certain temperature all day long. That is not how Mr. Heaters work. Mr. Heaters, they heat up and they keep heating the space up. You're going to keep you like once you achieve a certain temperature, if 75 degrees is your temperature, then you're going to have to turn the Mr. Heater off. Otherwise, Mr. Heater is going to keep going and going, especially in a small, tiny house like ours. And because we have inside our tiny home is 12 by 20, so 240 square feet, and we have a Mr. Heater on each end of the cabin, so it heats up in here quickly, and then the you have to so you can't use the Mr. Heater like like you would a space heater or central air. You have to like I the way I use it to knock the chill off. Okay, first insulate, then use the heater to take the chill off of the atmosphere in your cabin or in your house or in your barn, wherever, your cottage. You use the so actually what I do, especially during the mild weather. I mean, you really make out during the mild weather because I only use the Mr. Heaters um, at nighttime, maybe 2 hours most of the time. If it's not very cold, maybe 8 to 10. I turn it on, or I turn one of them on, or both of them on if it's cold. But most of the time, I just turn one of our heaters on, and at 8 o'clock, as the sun is going down during the winter, and I leave it on, and maybe, I mean, if the weather is really really mild, if it's not much of a chill in the air, I just maybe just leave it on for 15-20 minutes. But if it's cold and I want to warm the cabin up before we go to bed, I might leave it on as long as 2 hours, from 8 to 10 p.m. at night, until we get into bed. And so, which brings me into tip number 3: have adequate covers, beddings, blankets, quilts. You sleeping in the bed, you have quilts, comforters, you're gonna be nice and toasty in the bed. Now you don't want your cabin to be extremely freezing when you get out, get out of the bed for whatever you have to do during the night. But if with these Mr. Heaters, if they've warmed the cabin up pretty good, for an hour, hour and a half, and the cabin is insulated, chances are it's gonna be it might be a chill in the air once you get from under the covers, but it's not like incredibly freezing cold. And then if it is, and you have to run your Mr. Heater extended period of time, you need to stage a fire watch. Somebody needs to stay up and make sure that everything is okay, nothing catches on fire, especially in our tiny homes. I've seen, I mean, just like you see here, my Mr. Heater is right by my curtain here. That because that was like the clearest space that I could find to put mine. And so I never go to sleep with my Mr. Heater on my end of the cabin. And I and here's Shelby's here. This is the clearest space for his. He has a little more space between them, and I mean, in the way they constructed, as you can see, they're pretty safe. The fire is inside here. The fire is in here, and you have all of this space here. So so we're good to go. And Shelby has a lot of height, between his, where nothing's gonna catch. And eventually, I mean, I'm working on so many different things, but I probably put something behind here just for safety issues and things like that. But in a tiny house, we take a lot of shortcuts, we take a lot of chances, but it's calculated risk. We take risks, but it's calculated risk. But right. But that's only if you have to leave it on for a good while and you know you're about to fall asleep. Then you should probably designate someone in your family to stand fire watch. And but in general, you know, if you don't have like small children crawling around, little babies crawling around on the floor, or um, elderly people that's very sickly, because a lot of times elderly people, you know, they can't stand it to be too cold. Their little bones get really cold real fast. But if you have like just healthy adults or healthy teenagers or older children, 10, 12, 14 years old, then a little chill in the air, especially during the night is fine, especially with everybody have um, you know, comforters, warm quilts, blankets, and it, you know, they nice and toasty in the bed. So another tip, during the daytime, wear pajamas instead of, you know, trying to, you know, maintain uh, 80 degrees all day in your cabin. Invest, let the whole family invest in pajamas and footies, you know, hoodies, things to, you know, walk around with warm clothing on, whether it's clothes or pajamas, you know, leisure wear. So you don't have to, so you're not, so, you know, you don't feel compelled to, you know, turn the heater on every time the temperature drops a little bit. Now you want to be comfortable. You know, this is all depends on what your comfort level is. But as you know, just as an information for information, Mr. Heater and the 20-pound tank of propane, Mr. Heater burns 100 hours if you, with low setting. With low setting, with your Mr. Heater on low setting, with a 20-pound tank of propane, you get 100 hours. Now that sounds like a lot. Oh, that sounds like a, oh, you know, plenty. Okay, that's good. I think that's good for 20 pounds. 20 pounds cost you $20. 100 hours. I think that's pretty good. But do you want to be running out every week? Because even though you get 100 hours, there's 24 hours in a day. So if you're trying to run your Mr. Heater 24 hours a day, you're only going to get 4 days. So when you think about it like that, it's not a lot of hours. You know, those hours, that 100 hours run out quick. So what I do, I use the Mr. Heater strategically when needed, and not otherwise. Like when we get ready to take a bath, I light them up. First thing in the morning, you know, if it's really cold. And usually during the wintertime, in the first thing in the morning, the sun hasn't gotten up yet. 8 is the same thing in the morning, almost at night. 8 to 10 o'clock in the morning, I might just use the heater. Lately, I just been turning the heater on at 8 o'clock to sometimes 8:30, sometimes up to 9 o'clock. I used to turn on one of the Mr. Heaters, but it hasn't really been cold enough to light up both of our Mr. Heaters at the same time. Sometimes it depends on what I'm doing. I just like Shelby's end of the cabin. I like the Mr. Heater on his end of the cabin. If I'm already up and dressed and cooking on my end, then, and you know, if he's still in the bed, you know, he's still at rest. So I'll warm up his end of the cabin. But most of the times, I will turn the Mr. Heater on for maybe an hour in the morning, and same thing at night. I'll warm up the cabin nice and toasty um, when the sun goes down at 8 o'clock during the winter time here in Texas. and I'll turn it on and I'll warm up the cabin. Maybe sometimes, if the weather's really mild, I'll just warm it up for 20, 30 minutes. That's all it takes in a small cabin with one of these Mr. Buddy heaters. Mr. Heaters. Well, there's Mr. Heater, then Mr. Buddy Heater. I believe the Mr. Buddy Heater is the bigger one. But we have like the smaller of the big ones. We have two Mr. Heaters, and it don't take no time to warm up these cabins, especially when it's not even that cold. If you're just trying to knock the chill off. So, long story short, I only use I try to keep the use of our Mr. Heaters and our propane down to 5 hours a day. So that's 2 hours in the morning, maybe a little bit here and there during the day, and maybe up to a couple of hours at night. So that's less than 5 hours per day. And if I do that, then that 100 hours will actually end up lasting us about 20 days, which is great. So that's almost 3 weeks out of the month. That's on the high end, but I would say if you can make use this technique and make your propane last 2 weeks out of the month, that is great, because then that means you're only spending $40 a month to heat your cabin or to heat your house. So yeah, just use it as needed. You don't use the Mr. Heater as a space heater. Just use it to knock the cold out, bring the temperature up some. Then you turn that bad boy off. And here in Texas, by 10 o'clock in the morning, you're probably not going to even need it anyway, even in the wintertime. Daytime, it doesn't get hot during the wintertime in Texas, but, well, it gets hot sometimes, but the average temperature is still like nice and it's mild. Winter in Texas is very comfortable. If you ask me, it's very comfortable. We don't always we have what they call nips, um, little cold nips, and something else they call them. But it does get cold, but for the most part, here in Texas, it's like 70, 80 degrees in the wintertime. So winter is very nice. And well, okay, no, 70 might be pushing it. I would say the average temperature might be 60. I'll get back with you on that. But yeah, it'd be a chill in the air, but it's like most of during the winter time here in Texas, we're not freezing. It's 50, 60 degrees. We don't, we have some 30, 20, 30, but that's usually short lived. But yeah, you want to, like, just use your heater so you're not freezing cold. And once you reach the temperature that you want, you have to turn these things off, because they're not like they automatically regulated where you can just say, okay, I want to be 80 degrees and stop there. If you don't turn them off, your cabin will just keep getting cold. I mean, keep getting warmer and warmer. It'll get too hot, and it get too hot in your cabin very fast. So that's how I use these, and also to keep from using them excessively, where you have to replace the propane, buy more propane more often, is dress warm, wear pajamas. Don't walk around your house um, don't walk around, with just t-shirt on or whatever. You know, put some pajamas on, put some warm clothing on. Keep that heating bill down. We don't have to pay the utility company, but you still have to buy the propane. So, you know, keep that expense down so you can do something else with that money instead of spending 80, 100, $120 or $200, $300 a month on propane, you could be having some fun, or you could be buying some steaks or whatever, bringing the food in that you like and stuff, instead of just spending all your money on propane during the wintertime. So to me, I think if you're paying like $60 a month, and now I'm talking about a small space. So I mean, if you live in a big cabin or whatnot, then it's gonna be more to heat it. That doesn't change in a tiny home. The bigger your space is, the more it's gonna be to heat it, the more it's gonna be to cool it. So but the you want to keep your heat down. So wear some nice warm clothes. Invest in, keep your feet warm. you know, Make sure you have plenty of socks for the family. The little footsies, slippers. Keep your feet warm, because when your feet are cold, it feels like your whole body is cold. Then next thing you want to do is to go turn the heater on. And also when the sun is up and you're cooking, boiling water, whatever you're doing, that's probably going to heat your tiny space up pretty fast. So like, even if you like, for me, after 8 o'clock in the morning, um well, after 9, if I haven't turned the heater on, I'm not going to even bother, because 15-30 minutes later it's going to be warm anyway, because the sun is going to be out. So that's my tips for today, is to insulate. Number one, insulate your cabin. Two is wear warm clothing indoors. Three is keep your feet warm. Keep some footies on. Invest in some footies, some warm socks, house shoes. Oh, three is invest in blankets. Don't be trying to make do, with one little lightweight quilt or whatever. Get you some insulated blankets, um, comforters, and layer. Get the warm, fluffy stuff. And we sleep with throws, the warm cotton material. And like, here's my comforter here, and those are my pillows. Here's my throw right here, and we have more comforters and blankets and everything too. But that's what I basically just been needing so far. This winter we haven't even had to break out the heavy artillery. At least not yet. So it's only January. Today is January the 26th, 27th. We haven't had to break out the heavy artillery yet. We got all types of comforters and blankets and sleeping bags. And that's another thing. If you don't have a lot of blankets and comforters, a sleeping bag will do you well. A sleeping bag is good, because it's built to keep you warm. So use the sleeping bag. It's not a sleeping bag. I mean, we have several sleeping bags. A sleeping bag, you can't really wrap it around you, and you know because it's made for camping, it's made for you to be inside it, so you can't really use it like a blanket. Well, you can, but it's good in a pinch. A sleeping bag, it definitely will keep you warm, and it will definitely help keep you from freezing to death. In fact, it'd have to be really cold for somebody to freeze to death if they have a sleeping bag. But yes, you can that, or you can use that as part of your layer too. But yes, so you just use your Mr. Heater, to knock the chill off of the air. First thing in the morning, maybe 15, 20 minutes. It depends on the temperature. You haven't moved around, and same thing at night. I like to warm it up a little bit at night before, because at nighttime you're winding down. You're probably getting ready to bathe and take your clothes off and everything. So you kind of want it to be maybe a little warmer during that time until you go to bed. And then, so once you go to bed, right before you go to bed, you want to turn your Mr. Heater off. But by then, it's nice and toasty in your cabin. And, most people, it's sometimes they get up during the night, or some members of the family will. So you want to have your pajamas on. You want to have your socks on. And you want to just be warm so you're not constantly running this thing. You want to run your Mr. Heater when you need to. You don't want to run it when you don't need to. So that's what I'm trying to say. You want to reserve your Mr. Heater for when you actually really, really need it. So that way you'll have the propane when you most need it. When if you can just make do by putting a sweater on or putting a nice warm house coat on, sleeping under some blankets, putting your socks on or some footies, then do that. But if it's really, really cold, of course you have to use it. But whenever you can just put on a nice sweater or some footies, and the sun will be up, if it's just a few minutes before the sun come up, you know, like here in Texas, 8 o'clock the sun is up. 9 o'clock it's really starting to get warm again. So I don't even bother to turn these things on after 8:30 in the morning, because in 30 minutes it's going to be too warm if I have the heater on too. So, but yeah, make sure you insulate your cabin. Have some warm blankets for everybody in the family. Layer, have maybe two blankets and a throw. It depends on what you like. And every have some nice warm pajamas, leisure wear for everyone to wear around the house. So you don't need the Mr. Heater all the time. So you just use it. So like I said, if you use your Mr. Heater less than 5 hours a day, it will last you almost 3 weeks. And that's $20 for 3 weeks. So, and you can't beat that. I don't know. Even firewood probably will cost you more than that. But so yeah, that's what I say. But first of all, you have to insulate. So also, like I say, this method is good for when everybody in the family is of age and in good health. This might not be the best method if you have babies crawling around on the floor, or you have elderly or very, people that might be kind of sickly, because people, some elderly people, they can't, their body can't regulate the heat like before. So you have like a sickly people in your family, then this method might not work as best for you, because you got babies crawling around on the floor, so you can't really have the floor cold and everything. But also, like I say, that's why you have to insulate your cabin. And I know a lot of people knew this already, but I didn't. You have to insulate your cabin, and you also want to make sure you have some nice carpet on the floor. If not carpet, area rug. Um, this is my little section. This is my end of the cabin. You want some kind of insulation on your floor. We doubled our floor. It comes with a floor when we ordered our cabin, when we had our cabin built. It comes with flooring, but we since then we doubled our floor, and then we put carpet on top of that. And in some areas we even have um, 2 layers of carpet, because it just went that way. It just fell that way. Um, as we got more carpet, instead of just disposing of the old carpet, we just put the other, well, area rugs. We just put the area rugs on top of another area rug. So in some places, we actually have layered area rugs. But yes, you guys use your Mr. Heater when you need it. That way you have your propane when you most need it. And when you don't really need it, just put on a sweater or stay nice and toasty under your comforters and blankets. And I see you guys later.